Because of a $10 milk tea, I divorced my husband of 30 years. My daughter thinks I'm too willful. It made her feel embarrassed. My son said, if I don't get a divorce, he will cut ties with me. But I firmly signed the divorce agreement anyway. The reason is simple. Once, I asked my husband to buy me a milk tea. He refused. But later, I found out he ordered 999 roses for another woman on our 30th wedding anniversary. Daniel unexpectedly said he would take me to his friend's gathering. All these years, he never let me show my face in front of his friends. The reason is simple. He was among the first college students after the college entrance exam was reinstated. Well, I didn't even finish elementary school. I'm just a housewife. So all I could do was to do my best to manage things at home. Now our 2 children have already started working. Daniel has also retired. I happily put on the floral dress I used to wear when I was younger. I'm getting ready to meet his friends. I just stepped out the door. Daniel frowned as he looked at me. What are you wearing? Quickly change out of that. This is just too attention-seeking. I felt as if I had been splashed with cold water. I suddenly felt disheartened. Daniel frowned. He stared at me with dissatisfaction. You're over 50. What do you think you look like dressed like that? It's so inappropriate. I thought he didn't like this style, so I had no choice but to go back and change. He took me to the private room where they were dining. I saw Daniel walk straight towards a woman in the room as soon as he entered. He gently complimented her. Sophia, your outfit is really beautiful. I turned to look in the direction of the voice. I found that the woman named Sophia was wearing a floral dress that was exactly like mine. Daniel's gaze no longer showed disgust. Instead, it was filled with admiration and warmth. He whispered, "Thank you." Sophia thanked the other person. The 2 exchanged smiles. I completely didn't notice that I was following behind, until someone said something. Today, my sister-in-law also came. Daniel seemed to just remember me. He glanced back at me. His eyes were filled with annoyance. Right, he said to me, today is Sophia's birthday. She particularly loves the 8-treasure rice you make. I've already talked to the kitchen. You can just go straight there. I was stunned for a moment. I looked at Daniel in disbelief. I thought he brought me here to celebrate our wedding anniversary. I didn't expect it was for Sophia's birthday. What surprised me even more was, he also wanted me to cook. Daniel watched me standing there in a daze. He frowned. What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and go. I instinctively turned around and walked out like a puppet. We've been married for so many years. I've long gotten used to his commanding tone. His classmate said from behind, Daniel, be a bit gentler with your sister-in-law. Daniel scoffed disdainfully. She hasn't received an education. She doesn't recognize any characters. If you speak too subtly, she won't understand at all. Laughter came in waves. It felt like sharp knives stabbing into my heart. I know Daniel has always looked down on me for lacking education, but I didn't expect him to embarrass me like this. I made the 8-treasure rice pudding as if I were in a dream. I had the kitchen serve it up. I casually picked up my phone. I just saw Sophia's latest post. She posted a selfie holding flowers. She also included a caption. Thank you, Daniel, for the 999 roses at her age. She can still receive flowers. It's a bit embarrassing, really. Her fingers are slender and long. She wears a sparkling gemstone ring. She looks like a noble lady. I look down at my hands. Because I've been doing housework all the time, they have become quite rough. Daniel has never sent me a bouquet of flowers either. Now I don't even feel like eating. I turn my gaze to the street. In front of the milk tea shop across the street, a doll is enthusiastically dancing. Today, I forgot to bring my wallet. After thinking for a moment, I return to the private room. At this time, Daniel and Sophia are already seated at the main table. Daniel's hand is resting on the back of Sophia's chair. They look like a loving couple. All the dishes on the table have been finished. The 8-treasure rice I made. Sophia only took a small bite. Daniel sees me. He asks in surprise, "Why are you still here?" I tightly grip my fingers. I say, "I want to drink milk tea. Give me 10 yuan. I'll buy it and leave." "How old are you? What milk tea are you drinking? Those things aren't worth that price at all. It's simply a waste of money. Moreover, isn't there water on the table? You're already at such an age. You should save a bit for the kids. Just go back. Don't make me uncomfortable here." In the private room, the originally lively atmosphere suddenly froze. Everyone is staring at me. Their looks are like they're watching a joke. Sophia's expression is a bit awkward. She gently sets down her teacup. She said gently, "Sister-in-law, if you want milk tea, I will go buy you a cup right away." Daniel suddenly interrupts her. His tone sounds very impatient. What to buy? She's already grown up. Why is she still greedy like a child? Sophia, don't pay attention to her. She's just trying to pick a fight. He turned his head, looking at me with a complicated expression. His eyes are filled with obvious disgust and impatience, like a sharp knife. It stabbed deep into my heart. Hurry home. Don't make me uncomfortable here. Daniel saw me standing still. He yelled at me even louder. I felt a tightness in my chest. My heart felt like it was being burned by fire. I thought after so many years of marriage with Daniel, even if there was no love, there should at least be some familial affection. But I was wrong. In his eyes, I have always been an unrefined countrywoman, like a rag that can be thrown away at any time. I looked at him. My voice was soft, but it was very clear. Daniel, let's get a divorce. At first, Daniel was a bit stunned. It seemed he didn't understand what I said. Then he suddenly burst into sharp laughter. Divorce? You said divorce to me. Are you out of your mind? He suddenly stood up, pointing at my nose, shouted loudly, all for a 10 yuan milk tea. You want to divorce me? Are you overthinking this? People around began to whisper. Their eyes were filled with mockery and sympathy, more like they were just watching the show. I looked at his twisted face from anger, but inside I suddenly felt calm. I recalled these years. I did it for him, for this family, gave it my all. And what about him? What did he give me? The housework never ends, the blame never stops, and that heart that could never be warmed. I slowly nodded. That's right, all for a 10 yuan milk tea. I decided to divorce you. I turned around. Step by step, I walked out of the private room, not looking back. Behind me, I heard Daniel's furious shout and the crisp sound of a cup shattering. But I no longer care, these voices. Let them stay in the past. They no longer have anything to do with me. Back home, I organize my belongings. I look around the room. This place I've lived in for 30 years. Things that truly belong to me are surprisingly few. My clothes are already out of style. I don't have a single piece of jewelry. Even the furniture I use was bought by him. I've cleaned for 30 years, but those things have never been mine. Not long after, Daniel stormed back in. He looked very angry. His eyes were red. He stared straight at me. As soon as he entered, he shouted at me, "You really leave me speechless. You've made me lose face." He saw me organizing my things. He got even angrier. Furiously, he said, "What are you up to again? How am I supposed to face others after this? You really want a divorce, huh? I'll tell you. Stop dreaming." He hurriedly walked up to me. He tightly grabbed my arm, so hard that I felt my bones might be crushed. "You are coming back with me right now. Apologize to my friends. Just say it's because of menopause. I've said things I shouldn't have." I struggled to break free from his grip. I stared at him expressionlessly. "Daniel, I'll say it again. I want a divorce. This is not a joke, and I'm not being emotional. I'm serious." I looked at him, my eyes filled with disappointment and determination. Daniel's face turned various shades of pale and blue. It became very unpleasant. He probably never expected that I would so firmly and decisively file for divorce. He suddenly calmed down. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Fine. You want a divorce, right? I'll support you." He picked up the phone. He quickly dialed a number. He said anxiously, "Hello, son. You and your sister come back right away. Your mom wants to divorce me." On the other end of the phone, the children's voices sounded surprised. But more than that, there was impatience and annoyance. They hurried back. As soon as they entered the door, they immediately started questioning me. The daughter looked impatient. Her exquisite makeup couldn't hide her anger. "Mom, what on earth are you doing? At your age, still causing a divorce. Don't you feel embarrassed?" "I'm embarrassed for you." The son spoke more directly. His tone was full of reproach. "Mom, can't you be a bit more sensible? I was in a meeting at work. You called me back with just one phone call. Do you know how busy I am? You're just looking for trouble." I look at the two children I raised by myself. My heart feels heavier and heavier. I thought they would understand me and support me, even if they didn't understand. At least they would give me some comfort. But they stood on Daniel's side and blamed me instead, complained about me, claiming my actions embarrassed them. I suddenly find all of this ridiculous. I sacrificed everything for this family, for them. I gave it my all. I sacrificed everything. And in return, I ended up with betrayal from those close to me. I look at them. Their eyes are hollow. My heart feels as cold as if it were dead. Daniel sees that the children are all on his side. A smug expression appears on his face. He downloaded a divorce agreement from the internet. After printing it out, he throws it in front of me, like he's discarding something useless. "Don't you want a divorce? Sign here. I want to see." How will you live without me? He deliberately embarrassed me in front of our son and daughter. My daughter pretended to advise me. Mom, don't sign, apologize to him. Then this matter will be resolved. On the surface, she is advising me. In reality, she is preserving her own face. After all, it's rare for parents in their 50s to divorce. It really is uncommon. My son is staring at me coldly. His tone is as hard as ice. If you sign, then don't acknowledge me as your son anymore. I looked at them. My last bit of hope inside me completely vanished. I finally understood. In this family, I have never been one of them. Like a role that can be ignored at any time, I picked up the pen. My hand was steady. I signed the divorce agreement. The words flowed particularly smoothly, very straightforward. It feels like I've already written it countless times in my heart. I picked up the luggage that had been packed long ago. I walked out of the house without hesitation. Daniel's angry shout came from behind, the sound of my daughter crying, the scolding from my son. Those voices intertwined together, but at this moment, I only felt an unprecedented sense of relief, as if the burden that had weighed on me for 30 years had finally been lifted. I stood by the roadside with my luggage. My heart felt empty. 30 years of marriage. It felt like a long dream. Now it's finally time to wake up. I took out my phone. Scrolling through my contacts, my finger stopped at the name Emily. She is my good friend of over 20 years. She is also the only person I can think of right now. The call connected. Emily's voice was as cheerful as ever. Hello, what's going on, Emily? It's me. I'm divorced. My voice trembles. I almost couldn't hold back my tears. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a while. Then Emily's raised voice came through. What? Say that again. I divorced Daniel, this time. My voice was no longer trembling. Only determination remained. Where are you? I'll come pick you up right away. Emily's tone sounded very anxious. Not long after, a red sports car suddenly stopped in front of me. Emily jumped out of the car and hugged me tightly. Breaking up was the right decision. That kind of man should have been dumped a long time ago. Her eyes were red. She was more emotional than I was. She held me tightly. I felt her warmth. Tears flowed uncontrollably. Emily, I have nowhere to go. Come to my house, Emily said firmly. Who says you have nowhere to go? My home is your home. She opened the trunk. Help me put the luggage in. Then she pulled me into the passenger seat. The car drove into Emily's neighborhood. It was an upscale villa area. The environment was very comfortable. I sat in the car. Looking out the window, I felt increasingly uncomfortable inside. Everything here made me feel uneasy. Emily seemed to notice. She held my hand and said softly, "Don't worry. This will be your home from now on. You can stay as long as you want." I looked at her gratefully and nodded. We went inside. Emily settled me in the guest room on the second floor. There was a cleaner tidying up in the room. She was busy helping me organize things and kept complaining about Daniel. That guy, he's really too much. I advised you to divorce from the very beginning. You just wouldn't listen. Now you see. You wasted 30 years for nothing. She brings up my son and daughter again, and your 2 kids as well. What a waste of raising them during the new year. You were busy running around alone. You made over 20 dishes. Those 3 were just fine. They sat in the living room watching TV, not even lifting a finger. This kind of life should have ended long ago. I listened. It felt really uncomfortable inside. I'm already used to this kind of life, but only Emily would stand up to help me. Thinking of me. Emily is someone who gets things done in that era. It was hard for divorced women to find a way out, but she resolutely started a business. She built a career through her own hard work and accumulated her current wealth. She is now in her 50s, but looks like she's in her 30s. I looked at her. My heart was filled with envy. Over the years, I have given too much to my family, let alone 10 yuan milk tea. Even the clothes I'm wearing are cheap market goods. Compared to Emily, my life is far behind. After I moved into Emily's house, I found a supermarket nearby to work as a cashier. The supermarket provides food and accommodation. I planned to move into a dormitory. This way I could also trouble Emily less. Emily was strongly opposed. With the conditions in the dormitory, can you adapt? Just stay here with me. Don't be so polite with me. I couldn't go against her. I had no choice but to continue living here. The work at the supermarket is quite hard. I have to stand for over 10 hours every day, and I have to constantly interact with customers. But I really cherish this job because it's the starting point of my new life. That day, I was organizing the shelves. Suddenly, I saw a familiar figure. She is my daughter. She is with a young girl. They are selecting products. My daughter saw me too. Her face turned pale. Her eyes were evasive. It seemed like she had done something wrong. The girl beside her asked, "What happened? Do you know him?" My daughter quickly shook her head and said, "I don't know him. I really don't know him." She hurriedly paid and left with that girl. I stood there. It felt like my heart was being cut by a knife. That child I raised since she was young. Now she has become the person I least want to see. After work, my daughter stopped me at the supermarket entrance. She looked very unhappy. She questioned me directly. "Why are you working here? Are you trying to embarrass me on purpose?" I looked at her. I felt a chill in my heart. A chill runs through my heart. I have to work. I need to support myself. My daughter was trembling with anger. "You should hurry home and apologize to Dad. Admit your mistake. You're just a stay-at-home mom without a job. What are you doing out here as a saleswoman? You seem indifferent. I can't stand it." I responded to her coldly. "I'm not going back. Your dad and I are already divorced. You're really crazy." My daughter glared at me. Then she turned and left. I watched her figure fade away. All my last hopes were shattered. I thought she would at least understand me. Even if she didn't side with me, she wouldn't scold me in that tone. But I was wrong. She is just like her father, only caring about her own face. I took a deep breath. I held back my tears. I turned and walked in another direction. I won't look back. Never. At the end of the month, I made an appointment with Daniel to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to handle the paperwork. Neither the son nor the daughter came. They don't want to see me anymore. Daniel looked at me. He sneered. "What? Regretting it? It's not too late to go back now." I looked at him and felt it was just funny. I've been away from home for a month. Life has been particularly easy. Every day is just going to work and coming back, doing things I enjoy, no longer busying myself in the kitchen every day. And I don't have to consider other people's feelings anymore. This feeling of freedom is really nice. What do I have to regret? I retorted him. Daniel's expression suddenly darkened. He clearly didn't expect me to respond this way. We walked up to the window. The staff handed over 2 forms. Daniel still didn't give up. He looked at me. His tone became gentler. "Have you really made up your mind? As long as you apologize to me. Say a few kind words. Then I'll forgive you." I let out a cold smile. He said, "Daniel, are you feeling a bit too good about yourself? Why should I apologize to you? The one who should apologize is you." I picked up the form and began to fill it out without hesitation. The staff completed the check and stamped it properly, handed the divorce certificate to us. We held the divorce certificate and walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. The sun shone down on us, warm and cozy. I looked up at the sky, took a deep breath, and felt everything in front of me become bright. I'm free, back at Emily's house. I showed her the divorce certificate. She happily hugged me. "That's great. Finally, I can relax. Tonight we should celebrate properly." We opened a bottle of red wine and prepared a few dishes. Sitting at the dining table, chatting while eating, Emily raised her glass and said, "Cheers to our new life." I smiled and clinked glasses with her. We drank it all in one go. We were talking. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Emily got up to open the door. I heard a familiar voice. Our son stormed in angrily. He questioned me loudly as soon as he saw me. "What do you want to do? Do you know how much you've ruined me?" I was stunned. I asked him, "I've ruined you. How have I ruined you?" "My girlfriend's parents heard that you divorced at your age. They think our family has a bad reputation. They disagreed with our marriage." Our son said loudly. I looked at him. It just felt ridiculous to me. Any hope I had was completely gone. "So what do you want me to do?" I asked coldly. "You need to come back with me right now, to remarry my dad. That's the only way. I can marry my girlfriend," my son said firmly. My heart felt like it was struck heavily by a large stone. In an instant, it shattered into countless pieces. It could never be restored. I looked at the boy in front of me. He vaguely had my shadow in his brows and eyes. Is he really the son I worked so hard to raise? I opened my mouth, but felt as if my throat was blocked. I couldn't say a word. In the past, he used to cling to my leg and act cute. A sweet little child who called me mommy. Now, the indifference and disdain in his eyes were like sharp knives. They pierced my heart. I looked at him. My eyes welled up. Tears were swirling in my eyes. "Mom, why aren't you speaking? Why aren't you speaking?" My son noticed I was silent. His tone became more impatient. At this moment, Emily suddenly stood up. She blocked my way. She looked at my son angrily. "How can you speak to your mother like that? You have any manners? She is your mother. She is not your enemy." My son was startled by Emily's presence. He took a step back, but he still stubbornly said, "This is our family's business. What does it have to do with you?" Emily immediately retorted. How does it not relate? Emily is living in my house now. She is my family. If you continue to disrespect her, don't blame me for being rude to you. Emily stood her ground without backing down, with her hands on her hips. She took on a serious stance with my son. My son clearly did not expect Emily to support me like this. He was momentarily speechless. His face turned very ugly. I'm looking at Emily. A wave of sorrow washes over me. Who would have thought, in the end, the one by my side is actually my good friend, and not my own child? My son takes a deep breath. It seems he is trying to control his emotions. He shot me a glare and said coldly, "You will regret this sooner or later." After saying that, he slammed the door and left. I felt like I had lost all my strength. Helplessly slumping into the chair, Emily walked over, gently patted my shoulder, and comforted me by saying, "Don't mind him, he's just a spoiled child." I gave a bitter smile, thinking to myself, this child is one I have spoiled myself. I thought, as long as I give my all, I could earn his love and respect. But I was wrong, so wrong it's absurd. He is just like Daniel, completely indifferent to my feelings. A few days later, I went to work at the supermarket as usual. Life seemed to return to normal. That day, I was organizing things in front of the shelves. Suddenly, I saw a familiar figure. It was Daniel. He was with Sophia. They were holding hands, intimately selecting products. They looked like a loving couple. Sophia occasionally let out a soft laugh. Daniel looked at her with tenderness. I watched them. I felt a wave of discomfort in my heart. Daniel also noticed me. He was momentarily taken aback. Then he coldly snorted. His eyes were filled with disdain and contempt. Sophia pretended to be surprised and exclaimed. Then she gently said to Daniel, "Daniel, look, isn't that your sister-in-law, sister-in-law? What are you doing working here? It must be quite tough. I mentioned it before. You're just a woman. What can you do after the divorce? It's worse than before." She deliberately paused, speaking in a condescending tone. "It's worse than before. You should sincerely apologize to Daniel. Maybe he'll soften his heart and forgive you." I looked at her coldly. I interrupted her. "Sophia, stop pretending. How I live my life, it's none of your business." Sophia was silenced by my words. Her expression immediately darkened. She didn't expect me to be so direct. She was momentarily speechless. Daniel saw the situation. He immediately stood up to speak for Sophia. "Why do you speak like that? Sophia cares about you. How can you treat her like this?" I looked at him. It felt particularly ridiculous to me. He said he cares about me. "Daniel, how did you become so fake? The care you mentioned. It's to show off with your new girlfriend. Is that why you're here in front of me?" Daniel listened to what I said. His expression turned sour. He pointed at me and said angrily, You're truly unreasonable," I retorted. "I'm unreasonable," I smiled coldly. "Daniel, ask yourself, who is really being unreasonable? Who pushed me into this situation back then, and now you still have the nerve to blame me?" My voice grew louder. Customers around us were looking our way. Daniel probably felt embarrassed. He quickly pulled Sophia away. I watched them hurriedly leave. I felt no joy at all, only a deep sense of sadness. This is the man I once loved deeply. This is the home I once devoted myself to, but they are not worth it at all. After work, I returned to Emily's place. She told me mysteriously, "I found a new job." "What job?" I asked curiously. "You remember how you used to love knitting sweaters when you had nothing to do? Your skills are so great. You could definitely make money from this," Emily said excitedly. At that moment, I realized, for 30 years of marriage, besides doing housework, I only knitted sweaters. Most of the sweaters for my son and daughter in their childhood were knitted by me. Back then, they wore the sweaters I knitted to school. Classmates always looked at them with envy. Teachers also praised them as the best-dressed kids in the class. Looking back, that might be one of the few highlights in my past 30 years. My skills are indeed good. As long as I take a look at the style and pattern of a sweater, I can replicate it perfectly. Emily told me, there are many people online who love vintage styles now. They are willing to pay a high price for sweaters that have been discontinued or are out of print. You can take orders online. Help others recreate these sweaters. At the same time, you can also shoot some short videos, share your knitting skills. Who knows, you might even become an internet celebrity. I'm a bit hesitant. I'm already this old. Can I still do it? Why not? Emily told me. Don't mind your age. What's important is your mindset. Show those who look down on you. Without them, you can still live a wonderful life. Her words moved me. I decided to give it a try. After all, I have nothing to lose. This might be my last chance in life. I quit my job at the supermarket and started a short video account with Emily. We specifically help recreate those sweaters that have been discontinued or can't be worn anymore. Gradually, our account started to show some improvement. More and more people were attracted by my work and experiences, start paying attention to us. Just 1 month, our followers exceeded 100,000. Emily told me, now we can go live. Suddenly, I remembered I left a pair of knitting needles at Daniel's house. I had spent a month knitting day and night for that. It was what I saved up enough money to buy. That pair of needles is a limited edition. It's no longer available for purchase. It's especially important to me. I was determined to get it back. I called Daniel and said I was going back to get my things. He replied irritably, "What's there to take? What else is worth taking? You've moved out for so long. Why are you coming back now?" I didn't want to say much to him. I hung up the phone directly. I went to his house. As soon as I opened the door, the scene before me stunned me. Sophia was tying on an apron, busy in the kitchen. My son and daughter are helping out nearby. One is washing vegetables. The other is chopping vegetables. Chatting while working, Daniel, this man who never used to enter the kitchen, now even wearing an apron, happily helping to serve the dishes. The family is together. The atmosphere is warm and harmonious. As soon as I appear, their smiles immediately disappear. The situation becomes awkward. My son and daughter pretend not to see me, only focused on their own tasks. Daniel frowns. He asks in an unhappy tone, "What are you doing here?" I ignored him. I went straight to the bedroom to look for my knitting needles. The pair of needles was carelessly tossed on the wardrobe. It had already collected a layer of dust. I picked up the needles with a heavy heart, gently wiping them clean with my hand. This pair of needles is filled with my memories and emotions. Just take the stuff and leave quickly. Don't disturb us while we're eating. Daniel's voice came from behind. I turned around to look at him. I felt particularly unfamiliar inside. This man, is he really the person I've lived with for 30 years? Sophia came out of the kitchen holding a dish. She smiled and said to me, "Sister, now that you're here, let's eat together." I looked at her smiling face. I felt very uncomfortable inside. "No, thanks. I'm afraid eating your food will make me uncomfortable." I held the knitting needles and left without looking back. Sophia pretended to be wronged behind me and said, "Daniel, look, your sister-in-law kindly invited her to dinner, and she's still ungrateful." I hurried my pace and left that suffocating place like I was escaping. Back at Emily's house, I showed her the knitting needles. She could tell at a glance that this knitting needle set was very valuable. She said in surprise, "This is really a great item. Where did you find it?" I told her what had happened. After she listened, she said angrily, "Daniel's family is really in the wrong. How could they treat you like this?" I smiled helplessly. Let the past be the past. Now I just want to focus on managing our account well. Everything else is no longer important. In the days that followed, I devoted myself wholeheartedly to managing the account. I live streamed for several hours every day. I taught everyone how to knit sweaters. I shared my knitting tips during one live stream. Emily suddenly had a whim and shared my experiences. Unexpectedly, this experience sparked a strong reaction online. My account became an overnight sensation. The number of followers increased by 2 million. Thanks to this account, I really made quite a bit of money. Emily and I are discussing. We plan to buy a small villa by the sea when we retire in the future. We'll move there to live. A few days later, it's the perfect season for enjoying the sea and spring blooms. That day, my daughter suddenly called. Her voice was full of excitement. "Mom, I saw you online. You've become an internet celebrity. I really didn't expect that. You have this talent." Her tone was no longer cold, but when I heard her say that, I felt a bit uncomfortable inside. Could it be, if I had never created this account, would she have planned to never contact me again? On the other end of the phone, my daughter's voice suddenly became a bit hesitant. "Mom, I don't want to go to work anymore. Can you teach me? I heard that live streaming can be quite profitable." "No way," I answered immediately, without a hint of hesitation. On the other end of the phone, the daughter's voice suddenly stopped. It seemed frozen by the sudden rejection. She probably never thought that the mother who has always obeyed her would directly refuse her request this time. After a brief silence, she asked anxiously, "Why, Mom? Why can't I? I'm your daughter. Everyone must be responsible for what they say and bear the consequences." My voice was very soft, but it carried an indescribable weariness. I thought this matter was already over. Days later, I unexpectedly saw Sophia's account on the platform. She actually created an account that was exactly like mine, imitating me knitting and making videos. Emily, upon seeing it, was so angry she stomped her feet. She rolled up her sleeves and prepared to expose their family's disgraceful behavior online. I stopped her. That families matter. I no longer care to expose them again. It instead shows that I haven't let go. Not long after, Sophia's account was banned. The situation is simple. She said a lot of bad things in the comments, attacking me. As a result, netizens discovered it. Our two IP addresses were actually the same. Following the clues, netizens dug up the whole story. Sophia was heavily criticized by everyone. I've seen unreasonable people, but I've never seen someone this unreasonable. She stole someone else's idea and then dared to blame others. As a third party, not only did she attempt to take someone else's husband, but she also wanted to snatch someone else's job opportunity. The IP addresses are the same. What are you pretending for? You really think we netizens can't see through it? She was labeled as a home-wrecking mistress. In the face of online attacks, she chose to withdraw, and I benefited from it. My fan base increased. It solidified my leading position in this field. At that moment, Daniel's doorstep was piled with wreaths sent by others. He was so angry that he had a brain hemorrhage. He was sent to the hospital. He became bedridden. His life became completely dependent on others. His son and daughter were busy with work. The responsibility of taking care of him fell to Sophia. Until one day, the son and daughter discovered some strange bruises on Daniel. After checking the surveillance footage, they found that Sophia had been bullying Daniel. She said to him, "You are now a useless person, not even as good as a dog." She looked at Daniel and said sternly, "Look at how you are now. It's not presentable at all. What's the meaning of living anymore?" After saying that, she picked up the diaper that Daniel had just used, forcefully covered it over his mouth, continuously scolding him. "You old stubborn one, you always go against me. You bring me trouble." After watching the surveillance footage, my son and daughter suddenly realized my past kindness. Recalling the days after Daniel's surgery, I wasn't afraid of getting dirty or tired. I took care of him attentively. I helped him with various daily chores. Later, they realized they were wrong. They came to apologize to me, begging me to come back. "Mom, we really know we were wrong. Please come back. We can't live without you," the son said, crying. "Mom, don't go," the daughter continued. "Yeah, Mom, if you're not home, it feels like something is missing in this house." I watched them. My heart was completely calm. I am no longer the housewife I used to be. There's no going back. I rejected their requests, but I still went to the hospital to see Daniel. He was lying in bed. His body was filled with various tubes. He was wearing a respirator. When he saw me, 2 streams of tears flowed from his cloudy eyes. In those tears, there was a mix of regret and unwillingness, and endless sadness. I stood by the bedside, looking at him. I felt a deep sense of discomfort in my heart. He was once the most important person in my life. I managed the household for him. I took care of the children. I devoted all my youth and energy. But now, he lies there like a discarded old toy, lonely, waiting there, waiting for the fate's decision. Daniel tightly held my hand. It seems he has something to say, but his lips moved slightly. In the end, he didn't say anything. I wonder at this age, would he regret the things that hurt me in the past, no matter what he thinks? I no longer care. Even if he regrets it, what can change? Those past hurts are real. I cannot forgive him, but I no longer hate him. I sighed. I said goodbye to Daniel. This might be the last time I see him. After that, Daniel was taken back home. He still lay in bed. He can't take care of himself. His son and daughter can only take turns taking leave to care for him. At first, they were quite attentive. As time went on, they felt tired and annoyed. As the old saying goes, there are no filial children by the sick for a long time. They really couldn't take it anymore. Later, they started to treat me well, wanting to make up for the wrongs of the past. Between me and them, a high wall has already been erected that cannot be crossed. We can no longer be as close as we once were. I put all my thoughts into managing the account with Emily, living life vibrantly. We plan to relax by the seaside once we finish our current tasks, just to unwind at the beach. On a night when no one was paying attention, Daniel left this world alone. I set off to the seaside with Emily. The sea breeze blew in, carrying a salty scent. It gradually made the weight in my heart disappear. My new life has just begun. Those who once hurt me will all become passers-by in my life, left far behind by me. The sunlight shines on the surface of the sea. The water sparkles. I took a deep breath. Now, My life can finally be controlled by me.